Serious. What is the scariest thing to happen to you when you've been home alone? Story 1. This happened many, many years ago when I was a youngster. In my suburb, there has recently been a spate of break-and-enters. Where I live, they tend to happen suburb by suburb. Like, one suburb will get hit a bunch, then there'll be nothing for a while. My family had gone away for the weekend, but I'd stayed home because I had work. I was up at midnight watching a James Bond movie, Live and Let Die, for those playing at home, with all the lights in the house turned off. And I heard a really sudden and strange thud from my kitchen and living area. I instantly knew it was a weird noise. Nothing in the house made any noises like that, so it was immediately suspicious. Just as I was about to get up to go and check it out, I heard it again. That's when I realized it was actually the thudding of the thick glass sliding door from the kitchen to the outdoor patio. As I mentioned, all the lights are off. So I'm making my way through the house, turning the lights on. When I reach the light switch to turn on the patio light, I hit all of the lights at once, including the light at my front door, which is visible from where I'm now standing. We had those glass panels next to the front door, which I could now also see out of since the light was on. There was nobody at the patio area at this time, but through the glass panels at the front door, I saw someone sprint past and out of the yard. Even though I couldn't see any details, it was unmistakable to see that it was a person running past. It later occurred to me that they were most likely kicking the glass patio door to try and smash it and break in. As I later learned, this is apparently one common method of entry during burglaries. I had initially assumed they were hitting it with something, but a boot would explain the deep, hollow thud of the noise better than striking it with something. Was pretty spooky at the time. Just that sudden realization of, that is not a normal noise. Kinda crazy what your intuition knows in moments like that. Okay, you were so brave to investigate the noise, even though it could have been dangerous. It's fortunate that you turned all on the lights, which probably scared off the intruder. It's always better to be safe than sorry, and taking extra precautions like locking doors and turning on lights can make a big difference. I remember one time I thought someone broke into my home, but it turns out my cat had just knocked over like a vase or something. Needless to say though, you handled this much better than I did. Story 2. When I was around 8 or 9, my mom commuted to a major city about an hour and a half away. So I would bring myself home from school, about 100 meters away, lock the door and watch cartoons or play Neopets until she got home. We lived in apartment blocks, and one day, one of the older male people in the apartment lost his wallet. And he figured it must have been me. Keep in mind, I've never stolen anything in my life or had any trouble with the law, and I had no clue what he was talking about. He came and banged on the door so aggressively that I jumped out of my skin and was belligerent, demanding I open the door. I rang Mom crying, and she jumped on a train to come home, but she was an hour and a half away. She called some friends and they came and got me, and at that stage he had taken a break and gone back to his apartment, but left his dry cleaning there. When Mom got back, she stormed straight to his door and pounded on it like he had done to our door. He came to the door all shocked, and she demanded to know why he thought it was appropriate to bang on the door for an hour to scare a little girl. He replied that he thought I stole his wallet. Mom asked him if he still thought I did, and he said no, I found it in the car park. She looked like she wanted to kill him and forced him to apologize. Also, in that same apartment block, there was a hairline fracture on the sliding door that we didn't know about. A strong wind blew and shattered the entire window inwards. I was home alone then too. That was scary as frick. I have to give you major props for keeping your cool and calling your mom for help. But seriously, who does that guy think he is? It's not like you were some notorious thief or anything. You were 8. I'm glad that you made it through this crazy experience unscathed. It's definitely a story that you'll be able to look back on and laugh about in the future. On a side note, does anyone else remember being obsessed with Neopets? I always like the ones that look like super fuzzy little animals, but hey, that's just me. Story 3. When I was younger, my mom left me and my little brother home alone while she ran to the store. I was in middle school, so old enough to be left home safely for an hour, and my bro was only 2 years younger. Mom leaves me and my brother and are watching TV in the living room, and we see a bunch of smoke from the big bay window facing the front yard shortly after she leaves. We look, and a car has crashed into the ditch next to our driveway. I grab the phone and we go out on the porch. I call 911 and give them my address. Then I call my grandma and tell her what happened. Cops and the whole emergency entourage gets there. I go talk to the cops. Mind you, we lived on a state route. It's a 2-lane road, so the entire section of road in front of my house is closed off. My mom rounds the corner of the side road to pull into the street and sees a ton of cop cars in our driveway and shutting down the road. 2 fire trucks, at least 2 ambulances. And as any mom seeing this freaks out. Note about the road in our house. The road is significantly higher than the ditch, so it is entirely possible to miss the wrecked car, especially when you know you left your kids home alone. They allow her to park in the neighbor's driveway since ours is currently occupied, and we see her sprinting across the yards. The cops intercept her so that my brother and I are okay, and are able to calm down enough to talk to the cops. It's a testament to your maturity and quick thinking that you were able to call 911 and your grandma to get help. It's impressive that you were able to stay calm and provide the necessary information to the emergency services, despite the chaos unfolding right in front of you. I'm glad that you and your brother made it through this scary experience unharmed, but I do feel really sorry for your mom. I hope she was okay after that. Story 4. The scariest thing that happened to me. I didn't know actually happened until the following day. I lived in an apartment in a not-so-good part of a dangerous city with my boyfriend who worked nights. One day, our friend came over and called me to let him in our building in a hurry. Turns out this guy had been crouched by my car in the parking lot and approached our friend and closed in on him. My friend pulled out a weapon and the guy ran off. Upstairs, I noticed that the guy had left a green bundle near my car and assumed he would be back for it. It made me uncomfortable, so I suggested we call the cops. Not 5 minutes after, a cop showed up to ask where the guy had gone. SWAT, K-9, and about 10 cars showed up and swarmed our area. Turns out, the guy had escaped from the county the night before with 2 other guys. He was in jail for assault with a deadly weapon and repeated domestic violent offenses. He had climbed the fence in the yard behind our building where a landlord kept his camper, broke into the camper, and stayed there the night before. He had stolen all the electronics out of it as well as a butcher knife and was trying to break into my car before my friend showed up. I had been alone the night before and had taken my dog down to the yard to go to the bathroom. I noticed that the barbed wire on the top of the tent had fallen down and my dog was nervous, but I brushed it off. The guy had been in the camper watching me the whole time, and I never knew it. Story 5. We lived outside a rural town, and my mother always told my father not to leave me home unsupervised because it was a 20-minute drive from town if some accident were to occur. Anyway, my dad was a completely irresponsible parent, and so he ignored that advice and instead left me at home by myself at age 7. However, before he left to go back to a meeting, he explained how to load and dong his 12-gauge shotgun under his bed with buckshot and told me if anyone comes to the door and tries to break in, shoot them. Fast forward a couple hours, my mother calls him and asks how everything is going. He says I'm home alone. She loses her mind and rushes out of work to come home and get me. In her rush, she forgets her house keys. So she gets home and starts banging on the front door. I didn't hear her voice at all, so being the obedient child I am, I went into my parents' room, loaded the gun, and brought it towards the door. I was doing it, and I don't know if my mom heard it or what, but she suddenly stopped banging and yelled my name instead. It's probably the only reason she's alive today. I was really scared before I knew it was her, but I assumed my dad was smart and told me the right thing to do. Okay, it's important for parents to prioritize their children's safety and not put them in potentially dangerous situations. But oh my gosh, I can't believe they told you where the ammo was at age 7. In my opinion, that's a little too young to be left alone and know where the ammo is. It's also important to teach children appropriate ways to handle emergencies. But giving them access to weapons is not the answer. Tell them to call 911 instead. I hope that your parents were able to have a serious conversation about the dangers of leaving children unsupervised and the risk of giving them access to firearms. Story 6. My parents let me walk home from school alone when I was in 4th grade. In my now adult opinion, that's way too young. So I walk home from school. House is empty till about 5 when my parents get home. So I'm doing my usual routine. Mountain Dew Code Red, Doritos 3D, and Toonami on Cartoon Network. So I'm only home for about 3 minutes when I hear a knock at the door. 99% of the time, I stay quiet and just wait for whoever to leave. But for whatever reason, I actually go to the door and call out, "Who is it?" A strange dude's voice on the other side. "Hey, it's your buddy Mike." I don't have a grown butt man buddy Mike. I'm in 4th grade. My crap goes cold. Heart in my throat. goosebumps. Cannot move. Paralyzed. Terrified. Dude says again, "Hey, open the door, we gotta go." And he jiggles the door handle really hard. Then he knocks again. Bam, bam, bam. Jiggles the door handle hard again. I'm still like 1 foot away from the door. I actually never moved since all of this started because I didn't want him to hear my footsteps. After a minute of silence, I heard a car door close and him drive away. I'm still freaking the freak out for the next hour. And worst thing was, I was now super paranoid about walking to and from school because obviously he followed me that day and I had no idea I was being tailed. Story 7. There had been scratching in my ceiling for a while, and my landlady was dragging her feet over having it looked into. One night, around 2 a.m., the scratching became so bad it woke me up from a dead sleep. I tried to reassure myself that whatever it was couldn't really get through to me, and I would be fine until I could call my landlady the next day and really press the issue. Then some debris fell from my ceiling. Whatever was up there had managed to dig a small hole into my room. I screamed and heard some scurrying away from my approximate location, grabbed any stuff I needed for the next day, and got the frick out of there. Shut the door tight behind me and slept on the couch. I called my landlady first thing in the morning, and she had someone come while I was at work that day to check it out. A mama raccoon had managed to get her way into the space between the roof and my ceiling, and had given birth to a litter of kits. The guy speculated that the kits were getting old enough to start wrestling around, and that was likely what led to the hole in my ceiling. Luckily, it was just small, the size of a quarter, so there weren't any angry raccoons hanging in my room when I got home. They were able to safely trap and release the whole family. But I still started hunting for apartments ASAP. I moved into my new place on May 1st. Oh my gosh, talk about a wild animal encounter. I can't help but chuckle at the absurdity of a mama raccoon and her babies making themselves at home in your ceiling. It's like the beginning of a children's book or something. It's a funny and unexpected story to tell, but I'm sure it was stressful and scary to be in that situation at the time. I hope that you're enjoying your new place and that you don't have any more unexpected wildlife roommates in the future. Story 8. Someone tried to break into my neighbor's house while I was babysitting their kids. I was 15 and I used to babysit for my neighbors down the block. They had a really nice house, 3 floors with a built-in garage under the house that connected to the basement. It was the family's most used entrance of the house, and they rarely locked the basement door as long as the garage was closed. They also had the type of security system where anytime a door opens, you hear beep, beep, beep. After the parents left one night, I put the kids to bed because I heard the beep, beep, beep. I yelled out thinking it was the parents coming back for something, but no one answered. The system on the wall kept reading, basement door open. I was freaked out, so I called my dad and asked him to come by since he was only a few houses away. When he arrived, he told me to stay in the kitchen while he checked the house. But before we could, we heard the beep, beep, beep again, and then the garage door opened. When we ran to the window to see if the parents were pulling into the driveway, they weren't. Instead, someone in a hoodie was running out of the garage door and into the woods behind the house. My dad ended up calling the cops. I'm still creeped out by it. Story 9. I was in my basement where the computer was playing a store game, probably RuneScape, and heard someone pull into the driveway, naturally assuming it was my mother who was coming home from work. I heard the screen door open, but when no one opened the lock on the actual door, I started to go upstairs and I saw a pair of legs go by the window. While the basement was underground, there was about a foot that popped up above ground level that had 2 windows. I go upstairs and see 2 dudes in my backyard looking at the windows and talking about the door being locked. It was an attempted home robbery, who had been broken into a few times at that point and had everything locked. But 10-year-old me was terrified. They just left, nothing happened. No Home Alone crap. I did not get killed. I am very much alive. It's fortunate that you had everything locked up and that the would-be robbers were unable to get in. But I hope that you and your family were able to take additional steps to ensure your safety and security after this incident. I'm sure it must have been terrifying to have that happen, but it is pretty lucky this didn't happen like Home Alone. Although it would be cool to hear about any traps that you ended up setting. Story 10. I was probably 9 years old. My sister was 6. We had a babysitter who was 12, so alone in the sense that no adults were around. Jackass that I was, I squirted bug spray on my sister and she chased me in retaliation. I ran through some French glass doors to get away from her. She went for the knob and missed. Her arm went through one of the glass panes. She cut herself so deep you could see muscle, tendons, and bone. It looked like a shitty cut piece of raw meat, since that's basically what it was. The babysitter held a piece of cloth on my sister's arm until my mom came home, called her right away, and took my sister to the ER. She didn't hit an artery, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it was scary as frick at the time. Got 60 stitches out of it. Story 11. Early teen years. Power went out while I was taking a shower late at night. I got out of the shower already freaked out and looked outside through the window. My house was the only one without power. Stupid teenage brain, this is clearly an attempt on my life. Reality, the house had a weird problem where the power would cut out if the water heater and air conditioner happened to turn on at the same time. It had never happened to me before that, but my dad assured me that that was the problem once he finally came home. Your house wasn't hired to handle too heavy demands on the supply. Nothing weird about it, it just means whoever had the aircon installed or did the installation messed up. Although, it sounds like that old horror movie if you ask me. You know, the one with the woman in the shower? I forget what that's called. Can anybody remind me? Story 12. It was a spooky movie night at a friend's, and we were 3 movies deep. Just finished watching Dark Skies. I was hungry, so I was like, alright, getting my leftovers. So I went downstairs by myself. When I closed the fridge, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, and when I turned around to see what it was, there was a ghostly, white, skeletal thing just staring at me from outside my patio, with shimmering, hazy lights pulsing behind it. I freaking freaked. Drop my food and run up the stairs, nearly in tears, babbling about someone or something in the backyard. Turns out it was just my own reflection mixed with the lights and steam from the hot tub outside. But I've never been so scared in my life. Story 13. I was actually at a friend's house when her parents weren't home. We were maybe 10. It was her, my sister, her sisters, and me. We decided to go swimming. There had been a rash of burglaries lately, but mostly garages being broken into. Anyway, we were in the pool when we noticed the kitchen light turn on. It was evening. We assumed her parents looked in the window to do something stupid to get their attention, when we realized we do not know the individual in the house. We hid behind the wall of the pool, above ground, terrified, until our parents finally came home. It appeared as though he got spooked as he only ransacked the kitchen and left the garage door wide open when fleeing. It's a scary story to tell, but it's also a reminder of the importance of being prepared and aware of potential dangers in our homes and communities. I hope that you and your friends were able to recover from the scare and that you continue to stay safe and secure. I hope no one left the pool yellow. Story 14. Was working pretty late, 2 a.m., on my computer when I got an alert from my security camera that detected motion. I checked it, and there was a person staring into my apartment window in full view of where I was working. I closed the computer, turned off the lights, and went into the bathroom for a bit. Turns out being extra paranoid when someone is staring into your apartment at 2 a.m. isn't a good combination. I checked the camera memory, and the guy was there for 20 minutes, just real casual. Called the cops, and the kid ran away and came back an hour later. Haven't seen him since. Story 15. Was home alone one night, and it was close to Halloween in 2015. Loud butt knocks on the front door. I was eating dinner, so I slowly but cautiously went to the front door. I opened it up, and there is blood all over the front door and no one there. Kinda freaked out a bit though, it was a prank. Called the cops because what's the trick, you know? They said they would send someone there. They called back and said someone was on a bike and was bleeding bad and was going door to door asking for help. I missed the person, but one of my neighbors helped them out. Crazy. Story 16. I was home alone at my dad's while he was working nights, making my dinner and everything. I was probably about 14 or 15 at the time. I was watching TV while my potatoes were cooking when I heard something slam into the front door. I grabbed my pocket knife and check it, and nothing. About 10 minutes later, I hear another target on the front door. Repeat and still nothing. Really freaked me out because we had a few houses get broken into on the street. Turns out I didn't put enough holes into my baked potatoes and they exploded in the oven. I'm sorry, but that's such a hilarious twist to what could have been a really scary situation. I know it's so easy for me to jump to conclusions and assume the worst when we hear unexpected noises, especially when we're home alone. But in this case, it turns out that it was just some overcooked potatoes causing a ruckus. OP, maybe next time stick to, mashed potatoes. Story 17. It was about 3:30 at night and I heard the front door open. I called out from my room asking why my mom and dad were home only a half hour after they left for dinner. I almost crapped my pants and straight up jumped out of my bedroom window when a random male voice replied, "What? There's somebody in here?" Turns out it was somebody who got hired to check on one of our neighbor's dogs when they were on vacation, and they got the wrong house address. But the raw fear that gripped me when I heard his voice still gives me nightmares. Story 18. This just happened last week. I woke up to someone in my house. Walking up the stairs to my bedroom, it was about 1 p.m. and I worked third shift, so I was sleeping. In my haste, I didn't grab my bat. I whip open my door and it's my ex-best friend who I blocked on every social media site. She starts yelling at me for not responding to her and how she misses me. I don't know what scared me more, the split second I realized there was an intruder, or that someone I knew would just take it upon themselves to force me to talk to them by trespassing. It's concerning that this person felt justified in trespassing in order to force you to talk to them. It's never okay to invade someone's personal space or to make them feel unsafe or uncomfortable in their own home. It's good that this person is your ex-friend though. Maybe it's time to look into a restraining order too. Story 19. It was a hot summer and my parents went to a wedding. I had a project to do and it was like 1 a.m. and silent until a random drunk dude crawled in through my window with a bottle and blush face. I was 20 feet away at my desk from the window and we both just stared at each other. He was flustered and said, "Oh, sorry there, kid. Wrong house," and attempted to leave the way he came. He was drunk and dizzy, so I helped him by pushing him out the window. I thoroughly shut it and stared at it for 2 hours until my parents came home. Story 20. Once while I was home alone, I had been warned not to answer the door for anyone, or I might get taken away. One sales guy had been banging on the door repeatedly for the last 6 minutes. I guess I hadn't muted the TV fast enough. He screamed, "I know you're home alone in there." I almost died. Story 21. Just me and my mom. She got drunk and fell down the stairs. She knocked herself out cold and I had to administer CPR while the paramedics came. She has no recollection of this incident, denies it, and no one else in my family can relate to how scary it is seeing someone almost die and having their life in your hands. I don't know how first responders do it. Story 22. Police were chasing a guy and he ran into our backyard and over the fence to another house. It felt like the helicopter was gonna land on the house. I have a few more stories similar to this. Growing up in South LA was kinda wild. Story 23. I heard gunshots when I was home alone for the first time as a 12-year-old. Turns out my neighbor was a murderer. At least 12 cops car and like 2 fire trucks showed up, and I thought it was the end of the world. Story 24. Not super scary, but one time when I was like 11, I was home alone at night and got a call from the local sheriff's office, who told me they had just had a 911 call from this number, my house landline, and asked if I was okay. I couldn't call them. Nobody else was home to call them. Story 25. I started choking on a clump of Mike and Ike's. Only survived because I tripped and fell onto the couch in such a way that it dislodged the candy. I was nearly killed, then saved by being a klutz. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.